It started like any other evening. I had just finished dinner and was settling down with a book when the lights went out. The hum of the refrigerator stopped, and the streetlights outside my window flickered off. A blackout. At first, I wasn't worried. Blackouts weren't uncommon in my neighborhood. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, casting a weak beam of light around my small apartment. The silence felt heavier than usual, though. Even the usual distant sounds of traffic and chatter from the street below were absent. I decided to wait it out, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, but the battery was already low. A notification popped up, 10% remaining. I cursed under my breath and turned it off, deciding to save the battery just in case. That's when I heard it, a faint knock on my door. It wasn't the usual rhythmic knock of a neighbor. It was slow, deliberate, and uneven. "Who is it?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. No answer. I stood up, the wooden floor creaking under my feet, and moved cautiously toward the door. I pressed my eye to the peephole, but saw nothing but darkness. The hallway should have been illuminated by emergency lights, but it was pitch black. I waited, holding my breath, but the knock didn't come again. Maybe it was just my imagination. Minutes passed, maybe an hour, I wasn't sure. The air felt colder, heavier, like something was pressing against the walls of my apartment. Then I heard it again. Not a knock this time, but the faint sound of footsteps, slow and dragging, moving through the hallway. I checked the peephole again. Still nothing. But then, faintly, I heard breathing, low and raspy, on the other side of the door. My stomach twisted in fear. Gripping the kitchen knife I had grabbed earlier, I backed away from the door. My apartment felt suffocatingly small now. The shadows cast by my flashlight seemed to shift and stretch unnaturally. And then the footsteps stopped. I froze, my heart pounding so loudly I thought whoever, or whatever, was out there could hear it. Silence. Utter silence. Suddenly my phone buzzed, the vibration startling me. I glanced at the screen. A text from an unknown number. "I can see you." I dropped the phone, the light from its screen illuminating the corner of the room. For a split second, I thought I saw a figure there, tall, thin, and wrong. It didn't move, but its presence felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. The phone buzzed again, still on the floor. Another text. "Why don't you open the door?" I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The flashlight flickered, and in the brief moments of darkness, I felt the figure move closer. The last thing I remember before the flashlight died completely was the sound of the door unlocking. But I hadn't touched it. When I woke up, the lights were back on, and everything seemed normal. The door was locked, my phone was on the table, and the knife was back in the drawer. But there was a single message on my phone, timestamped 3:33 a.m. "See you again soon." I didn't sleep that night. Every creak, every hum of the fridge, every faint noise from outside made my skin crawl. I kept replaying the events over and over in my mind. Had it been real? Or had my mind cracked under the pressure of the dark and the silence? By morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds, warm and reassuring. But even with daylight, something felt wrong. My apartment seemed colder, the air heavy. I tried to push it out of my head. I went about my day, work, errands, the usual, but I felt watched everywhere I went. In the reflection of car windows, in crowded elevators, in the corner of my eye. Always fleeting, but always there. That night, I checked the locks twice before going to bed. My phone was fully charged, a flashlight sat next to me, and the knife was within arm's reach. But despite all the precautions, I felt that same oppressive dread as the night before. At 3:33 a.m., I woke up. No noise, no alarm, just a sudden awareness, as though something had jolted me out of sleep. I glanced at my phone, and my blood ran cold. One new message. The sender was the same unknown number from the night before. With trembling hands, I opened it. "Look outside." I didn't want to. I couldn't. But something compelled me, an icy curiosity I couldn't resist. I pushed back the curtain and stared out into the street below. At first, it looked normal, empty, quiet. But then I saw it. A figure stood across the street, directly under the street lamp. It wasn't moving, just staring straight up at my window. I stepped back, heart racing. The phone buzzed again. Another message. "I know you see me." My hands shook as I tried to call the police, but the call wouldn't go through. No signal. The lights in my apartment flickered, and I felt a sudden shift in the air, like a door had opened somewhere. My phone buzzed again. This time, the message was a photo. It was me standing at the window looking out. But I wasn't alone in the picture. Behind me, in the shadows of the room, was the same figure I had seen on the street. I turned around so fast I nearly fell, but the room was empty. Empty, except for the sound of a faint, raspy breath right behind me. The lights went out again. When I woke up, it was morning. The lights were back on, and the figure was gone. But I knew it wasn't over. The messages had been deleted from my phone, and there was no evidence of what had happened. But I still feel it, the presence, like something is waiting, watching. And every night since, I wake up at 3:33 a.m., waiting for the next message. It began with a text from the power company. Scheduled maintenance in your area may cause power outages between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. I barely glanced at it, too focused on finishing my work for the night. By the time the lights went out, I was already in bed, scrolling through my phone. The sudden darkness startled me, and the silence that followed was even worse. No hum of the refrigerator, no faint buzz of the street lamp outside, just dead quiet. I clicked on my phone's flashlight, its beam cutting through the pitch-black room. The silence felt heavier than it should, almost alive. I told myself it was nothing, just the power outage. Then I heard the noise. A faint click-click-click, like fingernails tapping against glass. It was so soft that, at first, I thought I was imagining it. But it came again, louder this time. My pulse quickened as I scanned the room. The sound was coming from the living room window. I crept out of bed, phone in one hand and a heavy flashlight in the other. The tapping continued, steady and deliberate. My heart pounded as I approached the window. I couldn't see anything outside, just my reflection staring back at me. But the tapping didn't stop. I pressed my face closer to the glass, trying to peer into the darkness. Then the tapping stopped. Before I could react, something moved, a shadow, quick and fleeting, darting past the window. My breath caught, and I stumbled backward. The phone in my hand buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Do you hear it?" I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Who was sending this? How did they know? Another message came through. "It's in the house now." The air turned ice cold. I spun around, shining the flashlight in every direction. The living room was empty, but the shadows seemed darker, thicker, as though something was hiding just beyond the beam of light. And then I heard it, a soft shuffle like bare feet on carpet. It was coming from the hallway. I froze, every muscle in my body locked in fear. My phone buzzed again. "Don't look." But I couldn't help it. Slowly, I turned toward the hallway. The light from my phone illuminated a shape at the far end. A figure, impossibly tall and impossibly still, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. Its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the weak light. I dropped the phone in panic, the light cutting out as it hit the floor. For a moment, everything was silent again. Then came the sound. A long, low creak, like a door opening. Only there were no doors in the hallway, just the one leading to my bedroom. I bolted for the front door, fumbling with the locks in the dark. Behind me, I heard the soft shuffle of feet, growing faster, closer. My fingers finally turned the lock, and I threw the door open, running out into the night. When I looked back, the apartment was dark and empty, the hallway silent. I stayed with a friend that night, too terrified to return. The next day, I went back to grab my things, but everything seemed normal. No messages, no signs of anything unusual. But the fear never left me. I moved out a week later. The night I left, I received one last text from that same unknown number. "You can't run forever." I tried to leave it all behind. New apartment, new neighborhood, even a new phone number. For weeks, I avoided anything that reminded me of that night. I told myself it was over, but deep down I knew it wasn't. It started again on the first night in my new place. I had just settled into bed, the faint hum of the city outside lulling me into a false sense of calm. At exactly 3:33 a.m., my phone buzzed. I froze. My heart sank as I reached for it, dreading what I'd see. Unknown number. "Did you miss me?" My blood ran cold. I had changed everything. How could they have found me? My hands trembled as I locked the phone and shoved it under my pillow, trying to ignore the dread clawing at my chest. And then came the noise. A faint click-click-click, tapping against the window. I didn't want to look. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to stay in bed, to hide. But something drew me to the window, that same icy curiosity I'd felt before. Slowly, I pulled back the curtain. The street below was empty. No shadows, no figures, nothing. I let out a shaky breath and stepped back. But as I turned, the reflection in the glass caught my eye. There was something standing behind me. It wasn't human, not entirely. Its shape was wrong, jagged and twisting, like a shadow come to life. Its face, if you could call it that, was a gaping void, darker than the darkest night. Before I could scream, my phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. Unknown number, you'll never escape. The figure stepped closer, its presence freezing the air around me. My breath came in shallow gasps as the room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in. I don't remember what happened next. The next thing I knew, it was morning. I was lying on the floor, my phone still in my hand. The message thread was gone. Everything seemed normal again, too normal. No one believed me when I told them. They said it was stress, a nightmare, maybe a breakdown. But I know it's real. I see it in the corners of my vision, feel it in the heavy silence that lingers when I'm alone. It's waiting, watching, and every night, at exactly 3:33 a.m., my phone buzzes. I stop checking the messages, but I know what they say. I'm here,